The emergency signal came in during the night shift aboard the Galactic Council station. Nexus Prime Communications Officer Minho was drinking his evening tea when the console started flashing red. He nearly dropped his cup as the priority alert filled his screen. New species detected, the message read. Sector 7 Alpha, species designation, human, technology level, early interstellar. Immediate diplomatic contact required. Minho stared at the message for a full 10 seconds before hitting the emergency button. Within minutes, Admiral Kyung-ho was standing behind him, still wearing his sleeping robes but fully alert. How long since detection? The Admiral asked, his voice calm despite being woken from deep sleep. 17 minutes, sir. The automated probes picked up their signals from the Terran system. They call themselves humans. Admiral Kyung-ho nodded slowly. Another new species. It happened every few decades, and the process was always the same. Send in a diplomatic fleet, show them the power of the Galactic Council, and welcome them into civilized space. Most species were grateful for the protection and guidance. The few that weren't quickly learned to be. Wake Captain Haijin and tell her to prepare her xenobiology team. Also contact Commander Taemin and have him ready the diplomatic fleet. We leave in 6 hours. Minho saluted and began sending messages across the station. Within an hour, the massive corridors of Nexus Prime were buzzing with activity. Technicians ran between departments, loading supplies and checking systems. The diplomatic mission was a well-practiced routine, but it still required careful preparation. Captain Haijin arrived at the briefing room exactly on time, carrying a thick folder of preliminary data. She was the Council's best xenobiologist, having successfully managed first contact with over 40 different species. Her calm demeanor and scientific approach had prevented countless diplomatic disasters. What do we know about them? Admiral Kyung-ho asked as the senior staff gathered around the holographic display. Haijin activated the projector, showing a blue and green planet surrounded by several smaller worlds. They call their homeworld Earth, single star system, though they have spread to several nearby planets and moons. Population appears to be around 8 billion on the home world alone. Commander Taemin, the fleet's tactical coordinator, leaned forward. That's quite large for a species just reaching interstellar capability. Most new species we encounter have populations in the millions. They're prolific breeders, Haijin continued. Based on their communications, they've only had space travel for about 60 years, but they've already established colonies throughout their system. Very ambitious for such a young species. Admiral Kyung-ho studied the display. The human system looked typical enough. A few rocky planets, some gas giants, asteroid belts, nothing unusual or threatening. What about their technology level? Primitive by our standards, Haijin said, pulling up technical readouts. They use chemical rockets and basic fusion drives. Their ships are small, maybe 100 meters at most. No energy weapons that we can detect, no shields, no faster than light. Communication. They're exactly where you'd expect a species to be after 60 years of space travel. Lieutenant Dongwu, the fleet's intelligence analyst, spoke up from his position at the back of the room. Sir, there is one interesting thing. They have an unusual amount of military chatter in their communications. Military? Commander Taemin asked. They seem to maintain separate military and civilian space programs. Most species integrate their space operations, but humans keep them distinct. They have something they call space navies for different nations on their planet. Admiral Kyung-ho wasn't surprised. Young species often maintain their primitive territorial divisions until the Council helped them understand the benefits of unity. Anything else we should know? Captain Haijin closed her folder. They appear to be curious and intelligent. Their probe transmissions show they've been actively searching for other life. They should be excited to meet us. Good. Standard diplomatic approach, then. Admiral Kyung-ho stood, his decision made. 12 ships. The Eternal Harmony is flagship, with full support vessels. We'll enter their system in standard formation and request a diplomatic meeting. Show them our strength, but keep it friendly. The preparation took exactly 6 hours, just as planned. The diplomatic fleet was the Council's pride, 12 massive ships designed to impress and intimidate. The flagship Eternal Harmony was 3 kilometers long, bristling with energy weapons and protected by shields that could deflect asteroid impacts. The support vessels were smaller but still impressive, each one larger than anything the humans had ever built. As the fleet prepared to depart, Sensor Operator So Young ran final checks on the long-range scanning equipment. She was young for her position, but had sharp eyes and quick reflexes that made her invaluable for first contact missions. "All systems ready, Admiral," she reported from her station on the bridge. Admiral Kyung-ho settled into his command chair as the fleet formed up around the Eternal Harmony. Through the massive viewing windows, he could see the other ships taking their positions. It was an impressive sight, designed to show any new species that the Galactic Council was not to be taken lightly. "Jump drive charged and ready," reported the navigation officer. "Take us to the Terran system," Admiral Kyung-ho ordered. The stars blurred as the fleet entered faster-than-light travel. The journey would take 18 hours, giving them time to review protocols and prepare for the meeting. Admiral Kyung-ho had done this dozens of times, and he expected it to go smoothly. Captain Haijin used the travel time to study the human communications her team had intercepted. The humans seemed peaceful enough, though she noticed they had an unusual fascination with conflict and warfare in their entertainment. Many species went through aggressive phases before joining galactic civilization, so this wasn't concerning. Commander Taman spent his time reviewing fleet formations and defensive positions. Not that he expected trouble from such a primitive species, but proper preparation was essential for any military operation. Lieutenant Dongwu continued analyzing human communications, building a picture of their society and culture. They were diverse, with hundreds of different languages and cultures across their single planet. This was normal for young species. Though the humans seemed more fragmented than most, Sensor Operator So Young monitored the ship's systems and practiced her scanning techniques. First contact missions always made her nervous, though she'd never admit it. There was something exciting about being among the first to encounter a new species. As they approached the edge of human space, Admiral Kyung-ho called his senior staff together for a final briefing. "Remember, we're here to welcome them into the galactic community," he said, looking at each officer in turn. "They're young and probably scared. We show them our strength, offer them our protection, and guide them towards civilization." "Questions?" Captain Haijin raised her hand. "What if they refuse membership?" Admiral Kyung-ho smiled. In 40 years of service, he'd never encountered a species that refused the Council's offer. They won't. Once they see what we can offer them, protection, technology, trade, they'll be eager to join. They always are. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Terran system. Ahead of them lay a single yellow star surrounded by planets, just as the probes had reported. It looked peaceful and quiet, exactly what they'd expected from a young species taking their first steps into the galaxy. Admiral Kyung-ho had no idea that everything he believed about first contact was about to change forever. The Galactic Council fleet moved through the outer edges of the human solar system like a parade of giants. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering, their hulls gleaming under the distant light of the human sun. Admiral Kyung-ho stood on the bridge of the Eternal Harmony, watching the star system unfold before them on the main screen. "Initial scans complete, sir," reported Sensor Operator So Young from her station. Her fingers danced across the control panel as streams of data flowed across her monitors. "The system matches our preliminary reports. 9 planets, several asteroid belts, and numerous small moons." Captain Haijin moved to stand beside the Admiral, her scientific curiosity already engaged. "Any signs of human activity?" "Yes, Captain. I'm detecting settlements on the 3rd planet, their homeworld Earth, also some activity on their moon, and what appears to be mining operations on the 4th planet, Mars. Their signals are exactly what we'd expect from a developing species." Commander Taman nodded approvingly from his tactical station. "Everything looks normal. No defensive positions, no military formations, just scattered civilian installations. Admiral Kyung-ho relaxed slightly. The humans seemed to be exactly what they appeared, a young species just beginning to explore their own solar system. How many ships do they have in space? So Young checked her readings carefully. I count maybe 30 vessels total, sir. Most are small cargo ships or scientific probes. The largest appears to be some kind of space station orbiting their homeworld. Nothing that could pose any threat to our fleet. Good, the Admiral said. This was going exactly as planned. Begin broadcasting our standard first contact message on all frequencies. Let them know we come in peace. Lieutenant Dongwu activated the communication array. The message went out in dozens of languages, both audio and visual. It explained that the Galactic Council had come to welcome humanity into the greater galactic community. It was the same message they'd sent to every new species for the past 1,000 years. The fleet continued its steady approach toward the inner system. Admiral Kyung-ho was already thinking about the formal ceremonies that would follow. The humans would be overwhelmed by the sight of the Council fleet, grateful for the offer of protection and membership. Within a few days, humanity would become the newest member of galactic civilization, but as they moved deeper into the system, sensor operator So Young began to frown at her displays. Sir, she said, her voice uncertain. I'm picking up something odd in the asteroid belt. Admiral Kyung-ho turned toward her station. What kind of odd? There's a large mass reading. Very large, but it's not showing up on visual scans. So Young adjusted her controls, trying to get a clearer picture. The gravity sensors say there's something massive out there, but I can't see anything. Captain Haijin moved to look over So Young's shoulder. Could it be a large asteroid? Sometimes the composition can make them hard to detect visually. That's what I thought at first, Captain, but the shape is wrong. It's too regular, too geometric, and it's huge, maybe 8 or 9 kilometers long. Commander Taemin felt a small chill run down his spine. Could it be artificial? I don't know, sir. There are no energy signatures, no heat signatures, nothing. It's like it's completely dead. But something that big and that regular doesn't occur naturally. Admiral Kyung-ho studied the data on So Young's screen. The mass readings were indeed enormous, larger than their own flagship. But if it was artificial, why wasn't it showing any signs of activity? Maybe it's an old derelict, he suggested. The humans might have found some ancient wreck and are studying it. Lieutenant Dongwu looked up from his communications station. Sir, I'm receiving a response to our message. The humans are sending a diplomatic shuttle to meet with us. Excellent. What's their estimated arrival time? 6 hours, sir. They're launching from their homeworld now. Admiral Kyung-ho nodded. Good, that gives us time to investigate this anomaly. So Young, keep scanning that object. I want to know what we're dealing with. As the hours passed, the mysterious object in the asteroid belt continued to puzzle the crew. It remained completely silent, showing no signs of life or activity. But the more So Young studied it, the more convinced she became that it was artificial. The proportions are too perfect, she reported to Captain Haijin. And there are structures on the surface that look almost like weapon mounts. Weapon mounts? Commander Taemin appeared beside them instantly. Are you sure? I can't be certain without closer inspection, but the formations look very similar to the gun ports on our own ships. Just much, much larger. Admiral Kyung-ho felt the first stirring of unease. Could it be some kind of human warship? Captain Haijin shook her head. Impossible, sir. Our intelligence reports show their largest ships are barely 100 meters long. This thing is 80 times larger than anything they've ever built. Then what is it? Before anyone could answer, So Young's station started beeping rapidly. Sir, I'm detecting more objects. Similar mass readings throughout the system. How many more? So Young's face grew pale as she studied her screens. At least 6 more that I can confirm. Maybe more. They're spread throughout human space, all showing the same characteristics, massive, geometric, and completely silent. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. 7 massive objects, each one larger than the Council's most powerful warship, hidden throughout the human solar system. Objects that showed no energy signatures but appeared to be artificial constructions. Lieutenant Dongwu broke the silence. The human diplomatic shuttle is approaching, sir. Ambassador Jeho is requesting permission to come aboard. Admiral. Kyung-ho looked around at his crew. Everyone was thinking the same thing. There was something very wrong here. The humans appeared to be a primitive species, but there were massive artificial objects scattered throughout their system. Objects that could only be explained as weapons platforms or warships. Grant them permission, he said finally. But maintain full defensive positions and keep scanning those objects. As the human shuttle approached the Eternal Harmony, Commander Taemin quietly ordered his tactical teams to battle stations. It was supposed to be a routine first contact, but nothing about this situation felt routine anymore. The human shuttle was exactly what they'd expected. Small, primitive, powered by simple chemical rockets. It looked like a child's toy compared to the massive council vessels. But Admiral Kyung-ho couldn't shake the feeling that appearances were deceiving. "The shuttle is docking now, sir," reported the docking bay supervisor over the intercom. "Admiral." Kyung-ho straightened his uniform and prepared to meet the human ambassador. Standard protocol called for a formal greeting in the main conference room, where the impressive size and technology of the council ship would demonstrate humanity's place in the galactic order. But as he walked toward the conference room, he couldn't stop thinking about those silent giants hidden in the darkness of space. 7 massive objects that shouldn't exist, positioned throughout human territory like sleeping guardians. Captain Haijin fell into step beside him. "Sir, what do you think those objects are?" Admiral Kyung-ho shook his head. "I don't know, Captain, but I have a feeling we're about to find out." Behind them, sensor operator So-young continued her scans, watching the mysterious objects that hung motionless in space. They remained completely silent, showing no signs of activity or awareness. But something about them made her skin crawl. They looked like they were waiting for something. The human ambassador was about to come aboard. And somehow, So-young knew that everything was about to change. The objects in space weren't derelicts or ancient artifacts. They were something else entirely, something that was watching them back. Ambassador Jeho walked into the conference room with a calm smile on his face. He was a middle-aged human with graying hair and kind eyes, wearing a simple blue uniform that looked almost primitive compared to the elaborate robes of the council officers. He carried only a small briefcase and what appeared to be a communication device. Admiral Kyung-ho rose from his seat at the head of the massive conference table. The room was designed to impress visitors. High ceilings, polished metal walls, and a huge window showing the vastness of space beyond. It usually made new species feel small and overwhelmed, but Ambassador Jeho seemed completely at ease. He looked around the room with genuine interest, as if he were visiting a museum rather than meeting with representatives of a galactic superpower. "Welcome aboard the Eternal Harmony, Ambassador," Admiral Kyung-ho said formally. "I am Admiral Kyung-ho of the Galactic Council Fleet. These are my senior officers." Jeho bowed politely as each officer was introduced. Captain Haijin noticed that his bow was perfectly measured, respectful but not submissive. This was a man who knew exactly where he stood. "Thank you for receiving me, Admiral," Jeho said in accented but clear galactic standard. "It's truly an honor to meet representatives of the galactic community. We've been hoping for this day for a long time." Admiral Kyung-ho gestured for everyone to be seated. "I'm sure you have many questions about the galaxy and your place in it. Let me begin with the standard welcome." He activated the holographic display, showing the vast expanse of council space. Thousands of stars lit up, each one representing a world under council protection. It was an impressive sight, designed to show new species the scope of galactic civilization. "The Galactic Council has maintained peace and order for over 3,000 years, Admiral Kyung-ho began. "We represent over 200 species across 50,000 worlds. We offer protection, trade, technology, and guidance to all member species." Jeho nodded thoughtfully as he watched the display. Quite impressive, Admiral. You've built something remarkable. The benefits of membership are substantial, continued Admiral Kyung-ho. Advanced technology, protection from external threats, access to galactic trade networks, and guidance in developing your civilization. In return, we ask only for compliance with Council law and a modest contribution to the common defense. Captain Haijin leaned forward. Your species would have a full voice in Council decisions. Many species have found membership to be transformative for their development. Ambassador Jeho listened carefully to the entire presentation. When it ended, he sat quietly for a moment, as if considering his response. Admiral Kyung-ho waited patiently. This was usually when new species became excited about the opportunities ahead of them. Admiral, this is indeed a generous offer, Jeho said finally. Your council has achieved something truly remarkable. However, after careful consideration, humanity must respectfully decline membership at this time. The conference room fell completely silent. Admiral Kyung-ho blinked, certain he had misheard. I'm sorry, Ambassador. Did you say decline? Yes, Admiral. We appreciate the offer, but we prefer to remain independent for now. Commander Taemin spoke up from his seat. Ambassador, I don't think you understand the implications of refusing Council membership. Species that remain outside Council protection are considered potential threats to galactic stability. Jeho's expression remained calm. I understand. Perfectly, Commander, but our decision stands. Admiral Kyung-ho felt a chill run through him. In 40 years of service, no species had ever refused Council membership, ever. Ambassador, let me be very clear. Refusal to join the Council means your species will be classified as a hostile entity. We will be forced to take appropriate action to protect galactic security. I understand, Admiral, Jeho said quietly. You're threatening to destroy us if we don't surrender our independence. The blunt statement hung in the air like a physical presence. Admiral Kyung-ho had never heard it put quite so directly before, but that was essentially what he was saying. It's not a threat, Ambassador. It's simply the reality of galactic politics. We cannot allow unknown species to develop outside Council oversight. History has shown us what happens when we do. Jeho nodded as if he'd expected this response. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out the communication device he'd brought with him. It was a simple black rectangle, no larger than his hand. Admiral. Before you make any final decisions, you might want to look outside. He pressed a button on the device. Immediately, alarm klaxons began blaring throughout the eternal harmony. Sensor operator So Young's voice came over the ship's communication. System, her usual calm replaced by barely controlled panic. Admiral, to the bridge immediately. The objects in the asteroid belt are powering up. Admiral Kyung-ho shot to his feet, his face pale. What did you do? Jeho remained seated, his expression unchanged. I sent a signal to our fleet, informing them that diplomatic contact has been established. The conference room's main screen activated automatically, showing the view from the ship's sensors. What they saw made everyone freeze in terror. The massive object in the asteroid belt was no longer dark and silent. Lights were coming online across its entire surface, not the soft glow of civilian systems, but the harsh illumination of military hardware powering up. The thing was enormous, easily 10 times the size of their flagship, but that wasn't the worst part. As they watched, the object began to move. Slowly, deliberately, it rotated to face the Council fleet. The movement revealed its true nature. It wasn't a derelict or an ancient artifact, it was a warship. A warship so large it dwarfed every vessel in the Council fleet combined. Dear gods, whispered Captain Haijin, what is that thing? Lieutenant Dongwu's voice came over the intercom, shaking with fear. Admiral, the other objects throughout the system are also powering up. All 7 of them are turning toward our position. On the screen, they could see running lights beginning to illuminate the massive vessel's hull. Weapon ports open like the eyes of some cosmic predator awakening from sleep. Energy readings spiked as systems that had been dormant came online. Commander Taemin stared at the display in horror. Those aren't exploration vessels, those are pure warships. Jeho finally stood, straightening his simple uniform. Admiral, allow me to properly introduce humanity's contribution to this meeting. The vessel you're looking at is the UES Retribution, flagship of the Human Defense Fleet. She's been waiting here for quite some time. Admiral Kyung-ho felt his legs go weak. Waiting? You knew we were coming? We've been monitoring galactic communications for over 50 years, Admiral. We've watched your council's expansion across the galaxy. We've studied your first contact procedures. We know exactly how these meetings usually go. The implications hit Admiral Kyung-ho like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just stumbled into space travel. They'd been preparing, planning, building. You've been planning this, he said, his voice barely a whisper. We've been preparing for the day when the galaxy would notice us, yes. We hoped it would be a friendly meeting, but we prepared for the alternative. On the screen, the UES Retribution completed its rotation. The ship was so large that it took several minutes just to turn around. As it faced them directly, its true scale became apparent. The Council's entire fleet could have fit inside. Its docking bays, Captain Hyjin stared at the massive vessel in disbelief. How did you build something like that? Your technology is primitive. Your ships are tiny, Jae-ho smiled sadly. Captain, the ships you've been observing are our civilian fleet. What you're looking at now is our military. The conference room fell silent except for the continued blaring of alarms. 7 massive warships, each one a floating fortress, had just revealed themselves in human space. Ships that had been waiting, powered down, and invisible, for the moment when humanity's independence would be threatened. Admiral Kyung-ho realized with growing horror that everything he thought he knew about humanity was wrong. They weren't, primitive species taking their first steps into space. They were something else entirely, something that had been preparing for war. The alarms continued to blare throughout the eternal harmony as Admiral Kyung-ho stared at the massive human warship on the screen. The UES Retribution hung in space like a small moon, its weapon ports glowing with deadly energy. Around the conference table, the council officers sat in stunned silence. Ambassador Jae-ho walked to the large window that looked out into space. He gazed at the distant stars with a thoughtful expression, as if choosing his words carefully. Admiral, may I tell you about my species? He asked quietly. Admiral Kyung-ho found his voice with difficulty. Please do, Ambassador. I think we need to understand what we're dealing with. Jae-ho turned back to face the room. 3,000 years ago, your council began its mission to bring peace to the galaxy. That's admirable, truly. But while you were building your peaceful civilization, humanity was still learning a very different lesson. Captain Hyjin leaned forward. What lesson? That peace is temporary, Captain. War is permanent. The human ambassador began pacing slowly around the conference table. His calm demeanor was somehow more unsettling than if he had been angry or threatening. On Earth, we never had the luxury of galactic peace. For thousands of years, humans fought each other constantly. Wars between tribes, between nations, between ideologies. We fought over land, over resources, over ideas. We fought because we were afraid of each other, Commander Taemin interrupted. But surely that changed as your civilization advanced? Jae-ho shook his head. It got worse, Commander. As our technology improved, our wars became more terrible. We invented weapons that could kill thousands at once, then millions. We built machines designed for nothing but destruction. We turned warfare into a science? Lieutenant Dongwoo spoke up from his position near the communications console. But you achieved space travel. Surely that brought your people together? In a way, yes, Jae-ho admitted. When we finally reached space, we did begin to cooperate. More, but by then warfare was built into everything we did. Every human technology, every system, every piece of equipment, it was all designed with the assumption that someday someone would try to use it against us. Admiral Kyung-ho felt a growing sense of dread. You mean your civilian technology is military technology? There is no distinction, Admiral. When a species spends thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other, military thinking becomes part of everything they do. Jeho gestured toward the window, where the massive human warship dominated the view. When we first detected your council's radio signals 50 years ago, we were excited. Finally, we weren't alone in the universe. But as we studied your communications, we learned about your expansion methods. Captain Hyjin frowned. Our expansion methods? Submit or be destroyed, Captain. That's how every species joins the council, isn't it? You arrive with overwhelming force, make an offer that can't be refused, and another world becomes part of your empire. The blunt assessment made everyone uncomfortable. Admiral Kyung-ho had never thought of it that way, but the ambassador wasn't wrong. It's not an empire, Admiral Kyung-ho protested. We provide protection and guidance. Most species are grateful for, most species never had a choice, Jeho interrupted gently. They saw your fleets and surrendered because resistance seemed impossible. But humanity spent our entire history believing that impossible fights were the only ones worth having. Commander Taemin stood up abruptly. Are you saying you built those warships to fight the entire Galactic Council? Jeho paused at the window again, looking out at the UES Retribution. We built them because we assumed everyone else had them too, Commander. When we learned about galactic civilization, we couldn't understand how the Council maintained control over so many species with such small fleets. Small fleets? Lieutenant Dongwu laughed nervously. Admiral, our fleet is the most powerful force in the galaxy. By galactic standards, perhaps, Jeho said. But humans don't use galactic standards. We use human standards. And by human standards, your fleet is barely adequate for planetary defense. The human ambassador returned to his seat and opened his briefcase again. He pulled out a data pad and placed it on the table. May I show you something? He asked politely. Admiral Kyung-ho nodded, though he wasn't sure he wanted to see whatever the human was about to reveal. Jeho activated the data pad, and a holographic display appeared above the conference table. It showed technical specifications for the UES Retribution. Length, 8.7 kilometers. Width, 3.2 kilometers. Height, 1.8 kilometers. Crew complement, 15,000. Armament, ... Jeho paused. Perhaps it would be easier to show you what she can do rather than list her weapons. Captain Hyjin stared at the specifications in disbelief. 15,000 crew members? Our largest ships have crews of 3,000. Humans build redundancy into everything, Captain. If half the ship is destroyed, the other half can still fight. We learned long ago that battles don't always go according to plan. Commander Taemin studied the weapons listings with growing alarm. These energy output readings can't be correct. No ship could generate this much power. Every human warship has multiple fusion reactors, Commander. We don't believe in single points of failure. If one reactor is damaged, the others take over. If half the reactors are destroyed, the ship can still operate at combat efficiency. Admiral Kyung-ho felt sick. How many ships like this do you have? The Retribution is our flagship, but she's not unique. Humanity operates 43 ships of similar class, with more under construction. We also have hundreds of smaller warships, though smaller is a relative term. The room fell completely silent. 43 ships like the monster floating outside their window, each one capable of destroying the entire Council fleet single-handedly. Lieutenant Dongwu's voice was barely a whisper. Why? Why did you build so many? Jeho's expression grew sad. Because we were afraid, Lieutenant. When we learned about the galaxy, we saw a vast space filled with unknown species, any one of which might decide to destroy us. So we did what humans always do when we're afraid. We built weapons. Captain Hyjin shook her head. But the galaxy is peaceful. The Council maintains order. There's no need for such massive military forces. The galaxy is peaceful because everyone is too weak to fight the Council, Jeho corrected. But what happens when someone strong enough to challenge that peace finally appears? What happens when the Council encounters a species that doesn't want to surrender? The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The Galactic Council's peace was built on the assumption that no one could challenge their military superiority. But humanity had just proven that assumption wrong. Commander Taemin looked at the technical specifications again. These ships aren't just warships, they're designed to fight entire fleets. Entire civilizations. Yes, Commander. That's exactly what they're designed for. Admiral Kyung-ho finally understood the true horror of their situation. Humanity hadn't built a navy to explore space or defend their home world. They had built a fleet designed to fight a galactic war against an enemy they had never met, but fully expected to encounter. And now that enemy had a face. It was the Galactic Council. Ambassador, Admiral Kyung-ho said slowly, what do you want from us? Jae-ho smiled for the first time since entering the room. That, Admiral, is a much better question than the one you started with. And I think you're going to be surprised by the answer. Outside the window, the UES Retribution waited patiently in space, its weapons powered but not yet aimed. Around the solar system, 6 more human battleships had taken position, surrounding the Council fleet like predators surrounding prey. Humanity was ready to begin negotiations. Real negotiations between equals. Admiral Kyung-ho stared at Ambassador Jae-ho across the conference table. The human's calm demeanor was more terrifying than any threat could have been. Outside the window, the massive UES Retribution hung in space like a sleeping giant, its weapon ports glowing softly in the darkness. What do you want? The Admiral repeated, his voice hoarse. Before Jae-ho could answer, Commander Taemin stood up sharply. His military training was taking over, pushing past the shock and fear. Admiral, we need to contact Council headquarters immediately. They need to know about this threat. Jae-ho looked at the commander with interest. That's certainly an option. Commander, how long would it take for Council reinforcements to arrive? 3 weeks, Taemin answered automatically, then immediately regretted giving that information to the enemy. 3 weeks, Jae-ho repeated thoughtfully. And how many ships would they send? Admiral Kyung-ho found his voice. The full Council. Defense fleet, over 200 ships. Captain Haijin looked between the Admiral and the human ambassador. Surely that would be enough to deal with your 43 warships? Jae-ho considered this seriously. Perhaps 200 ships is indeed a substantial force. But there are a few things you should consider first. He stood and walked to the window again, gazing out at his flagship. First, you're assuming all our ships are the same size as the Retribution. Some are larger. Lieutenant Dongwoo felt his stomach drop. Larger? The Retribution is a heavy cruiser, Lieutenant. We also have dreadnoughts and super dreadnoughts. Our largest vessel is the UES Devastation. She's 17 kilometers long. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. 17 kilometers. The entire Council fleet could dock inside such a ship. Second, Jae-ho continued, you're assuming we would fight a traditional space battle, but humans don't fight traditionally. Commander Taemin crossed his arms. What do you mean? I mean that if the Council decides to attack humanity, we won't wait politely for your fleets to arrive at our system for a fair fight. We'll strike first, hitting every Council world simultaneously. Admiral Kyung-ho felt the blood drain from his face. You're talking about total war, the destruction of galactic civilization. No, Admiral, I'm talking about winning. There's a difference. Jae-ho returned to his seat and activated his datapad again. A new holographic display appeared, showing star charts of Council space. We've been monitoring your communications for 50 years, remember? We know the location of every Council world, every military base, every industrial center. We know which worlds produce your food, which ones manufacture your ships, which ones contain your civilian populations. Captain Haijin stared at the display in horror. Every major Council world was marked with tactical information, defensive capabilities, population centers, strategic value. In a war between humanity and the Council would have exactly one advantage: numbers. So we would eliminate that advantage immediately. Lieutenant Dongwoo's voice cracked as he spoke. How? Simultaneous strikes on all major Council worlds within the first hour of hostilities. Not to destroy the planets, you understand, but to eliminate their military and industrial capabilities. Within a day, the Council would cease to exist as A functional government. The conference room fell completely silent. Everyone was imagining the nightmare scenario the human was describing. 43 massive warships appearing without warning at major council worlds. Their weapons reducing centuries of civilization to ash in minutes. Commander Taemin shook his head violently. That's impossible. You can't coordinate attacks across that much space. The distances are too great. Jae-ho smiled sadly. Commander, every human warship is equipped with quantum communication arrays. We can coordinate our entire fleet instantaneously across galactic distances. It's the same technology we use to monitor council communications. Admiral Kyung-ho realized they had been completely outmatched from the beginning, not just in terms of military power, but in intelligence, technology, and strategic thinking. The council had stumbled into the territory of a species that had been preparing for this war for decades. You've thought of everything, he said quietly. We've tried. T.O. Admiral. War is what humans do best. It's all we've ever done. Captain Haijin leaned forward. But surely you don't want to destroy galactic civilization? All those billions of innocent lives? For the first time, Jae-ho's calm facade cracked slightly. Pain flickered across his features. Captain, the last thing humanity wants is another war. We've seen enough death and destruction to last 1,000 lifetimes, but we won't surrender our freedom to avoid it. Then what do you propose? Admiral Kyung-ho asked before Jae-ho could answer. Alarms began blaring again throughout the ship. Sensor operator So-young's voice came over the intercom, tight with fear. Admiral, the human flagship is powering weapons. All weapon systems are coming online. Admiral Kyung-ho shot to his feet. Ambassador, what are you doing? And Jae-ho checked his communication device. I'm sorry, Admiral. It appears my government has decided a demonstration is necessary. The main screen activated, showing a view of the asteroid belt. In the distance, they could see a large asteroid tumbling slowly through space, a rock roughly the size of a small city. The target asteroid is uninhabited, Jae-ho said calmly. But it's approximately the same size as your capital city on the council homeworld. Commander Taemin grabbed his communicator. All ships, raise shields, prepare for possible attack. Commander. Please don't, Jae-ho said quietly. This isn't an attack. It's an education. On the screen, the UES Retribution was turning to face the distant asteroid. Weapon ports along its massive hull were opening like the eyes of some cosmic predator. Energy readings spiked as the ship's main guns charged. Lieutenant Dongwoo was frantically working at his station. Admiral, the energy readings from that ship are off the charts. I've never seen power levels like this. Captain Haijin stared at the screen. What kind of weapon are they preparing to fire? A kinetic bombardment system, Jae-ho answered. We accelerate a small projectile to a significant percentage of light speed using magnetic fields. The impact energy is ... considerable. Admiral. Kyung-ho watched in fascination and terror as the human warship prepared to fire. How small is the projectile? About the size of your shuttle, Admiral. The Retribution fired. There was no visible beam, no energy discharge, nothing dramatic at all. Just a slight flicker from the ship's forward guns. But the sensors immediately detected something moving through space at an impossible speed. Lieutenant Dongwoo's voice was barely a whisper. The projectile is moving at 30% of light speed. They watched on the screen as the tiny projectile crossed the vast distance to the target asteroid in seconds. When it struck, the asteroid didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a solid chunk of rock and metal. The next moment, there was nothing but an expanding cloud of superheated plasma. The silence in the conference room was deafening. Captain Haijin found her voice first. That was ... was the energy of a stellar collision. Yes, Captain? That was one of our smaller weapons. The Retribution carries 12 main guns of much larger caliber. Admiral Kyung-ho sank into his chair, finally understanding the true scope of what they were facing. A single human warship could destroy any fleet the Council possessed. It could crack planets, vaporize moons, turn entire star systems into graveyards. Now do you understand? Jeho asked gently. This is what war means to humanity. Total, absolute. Final. Commander Taman was staring at the empty space where the asteroid had been. Why? Why show us this? Jeho's expression grew serious. Because, Commander, I want you to understand exactly what you're choosing between. Humanity doesn't want to be your enemy. But we will be, if that's what it takes to remain free. The human ambassador looked around the table at each terrified face. So, I ask you again, Admiral. What do you want from this meeting? The silence in the conference room stretched on for several minutes after the asteroid disappeared. Admiral Kyung-ho stared at the empty space on the screen, trying to process what he had just witnessed. A chunk of rock, the size of a city, had been completely vaporized by a single shot from the human warship. Ambassador Jeho sat quietly, waiting for someone to speak. He had delivered his message clearly. Humanity possessed the power to destroy galactic civilization, and they were prepared to use it if necessary. Finally, Admiral Kyung-ho found his voice. What do you want, Ambassador? Really want? Jeho opened his briefcase one final time and pulled out a formal document. He placed it on the conference table where everyone could see it. Humanity proposes a partnership, Admiral. Not membership in the Council, but an alliance between equals. Captain Haijin leaned forward to read the document. What kind of partnership? A simple arrangement. Humanity will provide military protection for Council space in exchange for access to galactic trade networks, scientific cooperation, and technology sharing. Commander Taman looked confused. Military protection? From what? Jeho's expression grew serious. Commander, you've been monitoring galactic communications for 3,000 years. We've been monitoring them for 50. But we've been monitoring more than just Council space. He activated his datapad again, and a new star chart appeared. This one showed the galaxy from a much wider perspective, including regions far beyond Council territory. There are threats out there that the Council has chosen not to share with its member species, threats from beyond the galactic rim. Lieutenant Dongwu studied the display with growing alarm. What kind of threats? 3 different species, Commander. All of them hostile. All of them more advanced than current galactic civilization. All of them moving slowly toward Council space. Admiral Kyung-ho felt his heart skip a beat. You're talking about the Void Hunters? Jeho nodded grimly. So you do know about them, and the Swarm Collective, and the Machine Consciousness. Council officers exchanged worried glances. These were classified threats, known only to the highest levels of Council leadership. The fact that humanity knew about them was deeply disturbing. Captain Haijin spoke carefully. How do you know about these threats? Because we've been preparing to fight them for 30 years, Captain. While the Council has been hoping they would stay beyond the rim, humanity has been building the fleet necessary to stop them. Commander Taman shook his head. That's impossible. These threats are still decades away from Council space. The Void Hunters will reach the outer colonies in 8 years, Commander. The Machine Consciousness is already probing your defense networks, and the Swarm Collective is less than 15 years from your core worlds. The human ambassador stood and walked to the window again, gazing out at the UES Retribution. The Council has been hiding these threats from your member species because you don't have the military power to stop them. But we do. Admiral Kyung-ho felt the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. You built this fleet to fight these external threats, not to fight us. Exactly, Admiral. Every human warship was designed with one purpose: to defend the galaxy from invasion. We never intended to fight the Council or any galactic species. Lieutenant Dongwu was studying the threat analysis on the display. But why? Why would you protect species you've never met from threats we didn't even know you knew about? Jeho smiled sadly. Because it's the right thing to do, Lieutenant. And because we learned something important during our 50 years of monitoring galactic communications. He paused, looking around the room at each officer. We learned that despite your flaws, despite your methods, the Council has created something precious, a galaxy where billions of beings live in peace. where different species cooperate instead of destroying each other, where war is rare and civilization flourishes. Captain Hyjin was surprised by the emotion in the human's voice. You admire what we've built. We envy it, Captain. Humanity has never known true peace. We've never experienced a time when war wasn't threatening someone, somewhere. The galaxy you've created is everything we've ever dreamed of achieving. Commander Taemin frowned. Then why not join the Council? Why maintain your independence? Because the peace you've created is fragile, Commander. It depends on the Council's military superiority. But what happens when that superiority is challenged by forces from outside the galaxy? The implication was clear. The Council's peaceful civilization existed only because no one had been strong enough to challenge it. But the external threats approaching the galaxy were exactly that strong, Admiral. Kyung-ho looked at the partnership document again. You're offering to become the galaxy's military protector. We're offering to do what we do best, Admiral. Fight the wars that need fighting so that everyone else can continue living in peace. Lieutenant Dongwu was still studying the threat data. These enemy fleets are massive. Even with your ships, can you actually stop them? Jaeho's expression hardened. We can try, Lieutenant. And we will try, whether the Council accepts our partnership or not. Because the alternative is watching civilization burn. The conference room fell quiet as everyone absorbed this information. Humanity wasn't seeking conquest or domination. They were offering to stand guard at the edge of the galaxy, fighting and dying to protect species they had never met. Captain Hyjin looked up from the partnership document. What exactly would this arrangement involve? Human warships would patrol the galactic rim, intercepting threats before they reach Council space. In return, we would gain access to Council trade networks, scientific databases, and medical technology. We would also establish embassies on major Council worlds. Commander Taemin was skeptical. What guarantee do we have that you won't use your military power against us? Jaeho considered the question seriously. None, Commander. You'll have to trust us, just as we'll have to trust you not to poison our diplomats or sabotage our supply lines. Admiral Kyung-ho realized the human was right. This arrangement would require trust on both sides, something that had never been necessary in Council relationships before. And if the Council refuses this partnership, the Admiral asked, then humanity will continue preparing for the external threats alone. We'll remain in our system, trading only when necessary until the invasion fleets arrive. When that happens, we'll fight them as best we can. Without our help, without involving you at all, Admiral. We won't drag the Council into a war it's not prepared to fight. The noble sentiment somehow made the entire situation more terrifying. Humanity was prepared to face the destruction of galactic civilization alone rather than force others into a war they couldn't win. Admiral Kyung-ho looked around the table at his officers. They all understood the choice they were facing. Accept humanity's partnership and gain the most powerful military force in galactic history as allies. Or refuse, and watch as the galaxy's defenders fought alone against impossible odds. I'll need to discuss this with the Council leadership, he said finally. Jaeho nodded. Of course, Admiral. But I should mention that time is not unlimited. The Void Hunters are already moving toward the rim colonies. Every day of delay costs lives. As if summoned by his words, sensor operator So Young's voice came over the intercom. Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures at the galactic rim. Unknown configuration, but the scale is enormous. Jaeho checked his communication device. Those would be Void Hunter scout fleets, Admiral. It appears the timeline has just accelerated. He stood and gathered his documents. I suggest you make your decision quickly. Because ready or not, the galaxy is about to discover what real war looks like. Outside the window, the UES Retribution was already turning toward the rim, its weapons powering up for a fight that would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy. The age of Council peace was ending. The age of human protection was about to begin.